Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWireTV video. Today I'm joined by Sandeep Kamble. He's the CTO of SecureLayer7. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Alex, for having me on this program.
Thank you for
Uh,
taking the time. Now, Sandeep, I always like to start at the beginning. Can you please tell us what SecureLayer7 started offering when it was founded in 2012 and the products and services that you have grown to offer today, just a few weeks away from 2022?
yeah. So I think that's a really long journey. As you know, that we are started in 2012. And when I started this company, I was independently working with the various organizations, right from the startup companies and your big time enterprises to achieve their security goals eventually. So when I say security goals, I used to give them a security posture observations and help them to improve the security posture itself. So now, if you look at today, SecureLayer7 has evolved to be a well-respected leader in the organization. I mean, well-respected leader in the security testing segments, and we have been recognized by the Crest and Certain and market research organization. Now, SecureLayer7, if you look at the strength of SecureLayer7, is all of our team members, and all of these team members are OACP certified, ECSA certified, and CISSP certified eventually. And to provide the services, to the customers, these customers are coming from almost US, Middle East, and APAC region. And I'm happy to tell you that we have a portfolio of 650 plus customers around the globe now. That's the interesting part. And this is how we are been differentiating from 2012 to 2020, and that's going to be end very soon. And definitely. And eventually, when we started the company, we were mostly focused on the services. Now, if you look at, we have two different products in our disposal, and we are providing these services to this product to our various different customers. So one of the product I just want to talk about here is a Bugdaz. It's a, as you know, that it's a modern pen testing platform based on an active defense mechanism framework, which we built recently, right? So we deliver the proactive defense mechanism, and this philosophy that turns the old practices of looking at a security posture and before the or I would say post a breach. Okay, in today's dynamic tech world, the firms needs to be constantly assessing and reviewing their security posture, and this is where the proactive defense mechanism helps. Alex.
Yeah. Well, the Secure Layer 7 website shows your deep expertise in penetration testing, in cloud infrastructure security, web malware cleanups, code audits, infrastructure security, and training. So, what is the most popular service that your customers seek?
So this question is really interesting, Alex, because the things has been changed. The world before COVID is it was really difficult to sell security services, especially the pen testing, and it was a compliance driven, or I would say the forced business where organization has to do it because you have to go through the compliances. But now, because of, you can say this may be a reason, the acceleration of the digital transformation, and the people, maybe a security risk leader, they are actually now understanding this is one of the important part of their organization, and eventually they understood the importance of vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So let's take an example. Okay, according to the Office of Australian Information Commissioner of the Australian government, they have been mentioned some of the industries, right? So those industries like healthcare, finance, legal and accounting and management services, and the insurance. So these are 4 or 5 industries which has been breached from January 2021 to June, right? And eventually, if you analyze the data, if you look at, they all rely on web applications, mobile applications, cloud infrastructure, and they are storing, let's say healthcare industry, they're storing a PII information of the patients, critical information of the patients, or I would say the information which is now way too lucrative to the attackers, right? And they are behind this. And this is where I feel we are receiving a lot of requests for your web application, mobile application, or thin client, thick client. There are various different digital assets being asked for SecureLayer7 to test it. I just want to inform you one thing here. We are also been requesting the IoT devices, right? So the nowadays everyone wants to have some smart home appliances or industrial IoT device, which helps them to automate the system. And this is where I feel that these are the top prioritized services which has been asked by SecureLayer7. And this is where also we are giving Baghdad's along with the penetration testing services so that we can improve the complete penetration testing services process eventually over the traditional pen test.
Sure. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic is still with us. We now have the Omicron strain, and this saw a lot of digital acceleration of
Right.
cloud adoption. Online sales have gone through the roof. Working from home and remotely is now something that we take for granted, and plenty of more. And I notice your site has a giant cybercrime during COVID-19 message at the top of the homepage. So what lessons did SecureLayer7 learn from COVID? What kinds of cyber attacks have evolved during the pandemic? And what are the types of requests around COVID-19 and cybercrime that your customers are asking for help with beyond what you've just explained?
So I think, okay, it's again a very interesting question, because if you heard of Log4j vulnerability recently, right? So
So
that
just say that again. What was that again?
Log4j.
That's the new
That's a
JavaScript.
new
Yeah, that
new
just came out
vulnerability.
last week. Yeah, the vulnerability. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
absolutely.
a last week. I think everyone was busy for fixing that vulnerability.
Yeah, that's what all the reports
I
said there.
was I was talking with a lot of customers, and they were saying, Sandeep, we don't know what to do now because it's a very urgent. We need to fix. We need to find all the libraries. We want to ensure everyone is using online platform because of the COVID,
Mm-hmm.
right? COVID has given us all reality check in this case.
Mm.
And people or organization do not want to take down their services because of some security issues or severe security issues. So this is where I feel the major security request coming for identifying new vulnerabilities, ensuring whatever the digital goods or digital assets which is exposed to the internet, they are not really compromised by any sort of zero-day vulnerability, or I would say a known vulnerabilities. Let's take an example of Log4j.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's one of the biggest vulnerabilities so far have been released. But to be very frank, in the COVID time, the few takeouts I would like to mention here. The very first one I want to mention here: cybersecurity is now real. Don't leave it for later. Right. So many of the time, I think even if you look at the 2018, people were like saying there was no board discussion at all. Now board is very much interested to see what are the metrics they want to follow to ensure they are really secure. They don't want to get into the news saying blah blah company has been hacked or the data has been compromised, right? So security is real nowadays. And as I mentioned previously, attackers are now specifically looking for a cloud misconfigurations and the applications, right? So a lot of, if you analyze the data provided by the Australian government itself, if you look at the cloud misconfiguration which is leading to the data leakages, including their databases, right? That's the biggest concern area so far, I would say. And eventually, if you are a digital company, you know that you need to be you need to perform a frequent reviews of your web applications or your digital assets, and that's going to be your one of the important assets. Eventually you're doing business on that, right? And this is where SecureLayer7 coming in picture, performing a security testing, providing inputs. Those are actionable inputs eventually, and that helps to determine, to firmly say to their own board, saying that we are now on good cybersecurity posture, and this is where we evaluated. In fact, I want to advise most of the companies. I mean, I don't know how it is possible, but one of the example, like financial grading, companies has been graded by A plus plus. Nowadays, I think I would recommend to the government saying that this company's security has A or A plus or B plus. So provide a grade to the all security, all enterprise companies, say mentioning they have a good grade, and eventually customer can come and go purchase whatever they want because this company has a good grade in terms of security, right? Another thing would be, it's a human chain. Basically, everyone talks about that. Employee needs to be educated, and they have to be provided with a thorough awareness. I would say the COVID is helping us to provide awareness, and as they are on mobile phones as a user, they are using iPhones especially for privacy. So something like that is happening, but still on enterprise level there has to be a good awareness and education, as employees are the weakest link and they need to be educated, right? And more than before, I would say everyone is using mobile applications, right? So I would recommend enterprises and organizations focus on your digital assets or identify hidden digital assets. Enterprises have more than 30,000 plus digital assets. I would say, Alex, trust me, when we scan it, we find a lot of unknowns, and we need to take a permission. Like, can we test this because this looks really interesting? Let's change the scope in this case. And they are happy to find out such hidden gems and secure their crown jewels eventually.
Yeah, a lot of companies have the shadow IT. Their staff are working on, systems they're not supposed to be using, or they use it for convenience, and the company doesn't know. And I mean, it's good to do the audits to find those things out. But Sandeep, you mentioned Bugdaz, Bugdaz or double Z, depending on whether you pronounce it with the English American or the English UK pronunciation for the Z or Z. But that's something new from SecureLayer7, and you've mentioned it already at the very beginning. But just take us briefly again through what Bugdaz is and how it works.
Oh, okay. So, like previously, we were using a traditional infrastructure, and now that traditional infrastructure has been moved to the cloud. Right, that's a transition from traditional to the modern. Something similarly in the pen testing world, right? There is a traditional pen testing where there are a lot of manual processes are involved, and this process is making pen test as a cumbersome, complex, and time
slow.
consuming,
Yeah,
and
time
definitely
consuming.
slow. And eventually what happens because of this, the process gets slow and you're no more interested to fix the vulnerabilities. The further, I mean, eventually you'll not fix the vulnerability. This will be kept open for many days because no one is tracking them, right? So after, from the, as we know that we have experience of almost a decade, right? So from 2012 to now, we figured out there are a lot of gaps needs to be fixed, right? The board has to know what is happening, or C-suite needs to know what is happening within their organization in terms of pen test or in terms of security posture. So this is where we built a platform where the pen tester will log the issue as they reported as soon as possible, and eventually the customer can visualize them on dashboard, connect seamlessly internally to their team, like by using the Jira platform or any other integration if they want to have, which needs to be connected. And this is where we notify all sort of vulnerabilities that may be a critical, high, medium, low, and eventually they start planning actions so that they can fix in real time. So real time is I would say for a critical vulnerabilities, or maybe it depend on the bandwidth of the customers or organization eventually. But we are trying to create a tight loop, feedback loop eventually. So if something is coming out from a pen testers, that has to be known to the customers. So it's like it is something like we are putting our pen tester team in the front line, where they can talk to the customers immediately and fix the vulnerabilities. So the entire process, we first of all created a huge visibility for our customers, and this visibility is helping them to increase the process flawlessly, and eventually you can see the dynamic results coming out of that.
Now, I understand that customers would be sensitive to being identified, but are there any customer success stories in Australia, India, elsewhere around the world that you'd like to highlight? And are there any scenarios where SecureLayer7 was instrumental in, solving bugs or preventing, security breaches?
Trust me, there are a ton of stories. My customer will not like if I disclose but I have one story. I will not disclose the name here. The story is one of the company who headquartered in the Western world basically, and they also have a office in specifically Asia part. What happened? They have given us a assessment for testing their physical infrastructure, also testing their data centers and servers and everything, which we call it as an offensive red team assessment. So what we have done, we reached out to the office wearing the t-shirts of their own company. I would say Acme company, and that t-shirt helped us to get into the
Walk
canteen.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, so we went in the canteen, and there we were using a device which will scan their IDPs. Okay, so that's the normal IDs which we used to scan it, and we once we scanned it, we copied on our other ID card. I would say a duplicated card, and we used that card to get into the office eventually on by that employee name. And we were successfully in the office. We were looking at all the infrastructure, what other things are there. We started scanning. We are looking at our Wi-Fi. We're finding a good place where no one can find us eventually, and that was I would say nearby to the management area where no one wants to go. And eventually we plugged our devices, computers and laptops, and there was a 3-story floor building. Within that, our 4 people were just roaming here and there and identifying what could be the entry point eventually. So we successfully entered into the network. We had access to the internal data, and then we started pivoting our exploits so that we will able to get into the management's networks, get into your accounting networks, and get into the sales department eventually, and extract as much as possible data. And trust me, we extracted a lot of sensitive information, and eventually we provided back to our customer with the proof saying that this is how it can be exploited. And the interesting parts, Alex, here would be we also got physical access to the data centers, their own data center, and we put it the note that we were been here, SecureLayer7 was here. We just stick that note, and we are saying we would have plugged some sort of rubber ducky, one of the device which gives you the access back. And then eventually someone noticed that sticker, and that got escalated, and they were also calling to the police. But eventually we had a no arrest warrant, and this is how we were successfully breached into the entire conglomerate, I would say one of the biggest organizations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's nothing more, better. There's nothing better than having proof and that little sticker saying we were here. It would have been a big shock to the management. No doubt they would have taken immediate action to, tighten up the security, and it was a good wake up call.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, Sandeep, what are the upcoming webinars or conferences that you've got in 2022 that people should look out for if they go to the SecureLayer7.net website?
Oh, I think this is a coincident question that you've been asked because we are going to one of our Data Security Council of India conference on 15th. I think
15th of January or February? Or?
No, 15th of December itself.
Okay, yeah, right.
It's just happening. And I think it's 4 o'clock, maybe 4:30, something like that. You can just look at the website itself. You will find my talk there. And eventually, I'm going to talk about the identity access management. Again, this is one of the area which is on fire as of now. People are just talking about how they can create a zero trust network through using identity access management or any other technology, right? And we also have a lot of planned demos for Baghdad and OTSEF. As I already spoke about Baghdad, and also OTSEF is something related to the online fraud detection. We have a planned demo, so if someone is interested, they can just go to the website and visit and do the registration for the demos.
And for those who are not able to join live, will there be online replays that they can access?
Yes, they can access.
Yeah, excellent. Now, Sandeep, as we get towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask the people that I'm speaking to, what is a memory of your first computer that you can share with us?
Okay, so that's a very long and I want to be, honestly, I just want to recall it. But eventually, when I was 17, I used to go to the cyber cafe to play the computer games. And that is my first computer, I would say, the entire cyber cafe. I can sit on any computer when whatever I want to do there. I still remember in the cyber cafe, all computers are connected in LAN, and it also connected to the internet. Eventually, I got curious. I wanted to start learning how it works, how the networking happens, because everyone is communicated within this LAN itself. And somehow I got introduced to the MSN and Yahoo Messenger, if you're able to recall those old
Messenger.
technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I used to chat together and all that. And I would say, if you ask me the memory, something weird happened on my Yahoo ID. I was not able to access it I was not able to figure out for at least 1 week what happened, why Yahoo is not able to give me the access. And then it turned out it got hacked, and eventually I lost my important ID. I would say I used to play computer game using that ID only, and it got compromised, and I stopped playing game, and that event turned into something else, and I got interested into the security from that point.
Well, that's yeah. You had a pain point which you solved by getting into security, and this leads me to the question. What was the spark that compelled SecureLayer7's founders to start the company?
I think that's again a very different story altogether. Even before starting a SecureLayer7, I was founded another company called as a F9 Pix, which is again a photography networking and one of the first social networking for photographers. Eventually, there was a lot of problem happens around it, and somehow we need to take that down. And I went back to thinking, what should I do next? Then I figured out really good into the security. I identify a lot of vulnerabilities in Google, Facebook, and Twitter back in time in 2011 and 12, something like that. And then I thought, why should not try at least few of the customers? Let's try to solve their problems. Let's think about what kind of security issues that they are having. And I also know some of the security gaps which usually most of the enterprises or a VC funded startup had back in time. And this is where I started independently in 2016. I took a decision to make it as a private limited within India, and also start a company in US as a registered SecureLayer7. And from 2016 to 2021, we are just growing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
clearly it's impressive, and you're now opening up into Australia, and it's that global expansion is a very important thing. It's good to get tech knowledge from everywhere, and India has a very strong IT background. There's a lot of great work that happens from there. So
Correct.
great to hear. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
I was wondering, how do you see SecureLayer7 evolving over the next couple of years, and what do you think the security landscape might look like in the 2030s?
Oh, 2030s, I would say that's a very difficult question because security is changing every day, every hour. You will be finding new vulnerabilities coming out of the market, and that's going to shake everyone. 2030, to be very frank, it's very difficult to explain, but I can tell you maybe the artificial intelligence is going to play a major role within security for identifying vulnerabilities or at least alerting that. And the VR technology, which everyone is now behind to figure
Yeah.
out what is happening.
Yep.
So let's say if I'm coming in your VR and giving you some sort of message, that's going to be disastrous, right? If you're doing some sort of activity and I'm coming in VR and saying, hey, I'm here, how are you, man? So that's again, I mean, this is just a hypothetical, but yeah, this can be one of the biggest security issue. But if you look at through the lens of a security researcher, the more the industrial IoT devices are increasing. So maybe I can replay one of the movie back in time. Hacking signals still it happens, or hacking into the oil and gas. So there are a lot of issues, I would say, till 2030 we might need to fix before we even reach out to there.
Absolutely. Now, my second last question is always to ask, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received to help you get where you are today?
All right. I think eventually what happens as a tech person, as you know that, a lot of feedbacks you get back as on when you're in the journey of entrepreneurship, and you're in the tech and you're trying to make a business successful. In this case, the lot of decision making or prioritization feedback you get. But I would say the most favorite would be with me would be the prioritization. I really need to think on how to make a prioritization eventually. So when I say prioritization, it's not just a binary decision making. You need to think about the second order thought process so that you will able to make a right decision for your team members, for your company colleagues, or for your customers, for anyone else eventually. As we are working within the security industry, our consultation, our decision makes huge impacts, right? So this is where I had a really good piece of advice from my fellow entrepreneur friends and also some of my senior fellow members. They always talk about the prioritization and the decision making, I would say.
Okay, so Sandeep, what is your final message for iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
So I think first of all, we as wire viewers, I want to mention here is we need to think about what are the security threats are coming in your system. You need to be aware of and get awareness and get educated throughout the news channels, or I would say throughout the various feeds which is coming through Twitter and all that. That's the first thing. But if you're in an organization, okay, then in this case you might need to listen to your CISOs or security researchers, or security leader. Eventually they know what is happening for a security industry, and this is how you can safeguard your, maybe a family, maybe your enterprises, maybe your startup. And finally, one suggestion would be, if anyone startup company looking at this video, start baking cyber security from zero. And then eventually once you exit, a lot of VC is going to ask you how you built secure startup company.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's become an essential part of everyday life. Security is something that you can't ignore anymore. You can't have security by obscurity. You've got to tackle it head on. You've got to put the resources together to make sure that you're testing, you're pen testing your environments. I mean, you gave that startling example of how easy it was ultimately to breach an organization's physical security, cloning RFID cards and all the rest, just from their canteen. So incredible stuff. Eye-opening example. Sandeep Kamble, the CTO of SecureLayer7. I thank you very much for your time. I wish you the best of success with the expansion into Australia, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
Sure, Alex. I would glad to meet you here, and glad to chat with you. And I hope to meet you in Australia if everything goes well.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. Bye bye.